Hey, what's going on, everybody? James Hahn II from TribeRocket.com, checking in for episode 3 of Branding with the Best. Rocking the Detroit Old English D today because we got to represent for the Tigers. Also, this is serious business, but I don't want this to be a distraction, so I'll go ahead and get that out of the way. All right, so we were off last week, and that was not anticipated, but it was OTC week, the week of the Offshore Technology Conference here in Houston. We had 94,000 people show up, and it was quite a show, and actually my first time out to OTC, so it was a phenomenal time for myself. But I want to get right back to a conversation that we started on episode 2. And episode 2 was all about Chesapeake Energy and about what a great job that they do in communicating their brand's message. And every time that I make one of these, whether it's a blog post or anything like that, and share it, I always ask a question. Sometimes I'll make a statement, but usually ask just a really straightforward question to spark a conversation. So that's a tip for y'all when you're out there. If you're creating content, don't share it out like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing ever. Just share it like you would share with a friend. Just regular, hey, what's up? There's this thing happening. Well, I'm blessed to be a contributor or administrator on a very successful, very popular Facebook page called Oilfield Magazine. And shout out to Oilfield Magazine, to the guys that run that, and for letting me come and bring my ridiculousness to your page. It's really fun being part of this page. And on Oilfield Magazine, when I shared episode 2, it was the first time we'd posted a video straight to the page. But I asked the question, should oil companies become better communicators? And the sentiment was pretty unanimous. But it was wrapped up in Jim's comment here. And Jim says, shout out to Jim for the great name. So Jim said, no, it's a waste of time. Believe me. Oil people live between, sorry, I got it zoomed in a little bit. So let me just zoom out a little bit. So oil people live between boom and bust, and there is no time to play politically correct BS games. If you get Washington's attention long enough, they'll slap more tariffs, taxes, and burdensome regulations on you, and trying to prove oil companies are just doing their job is stupid and a waste of time and revenue. And this particular comment really strikes home for me, hit me right in the heart, and I said, you know what? Actually, I'm the one who did the reply. I said, hey man, thanks for the comment. We're going to do the next episode on this particular topic because I want to continue this conversation. So I went to the American Petroleum Institute Houston chapter meeting last month and saw David Blackman, who's become a friend over the course of years via Twitter and so forth. And he used to be with FTI Consulting. He's now the Director of Government Relations at Lynn Energy. And his presentation, we've actually got it loaded up for you on SlideShare. It's going to be embedded underneath this video on the blog post. So we'll link to that on all the pages that we load it to. But so if you want to see the full presentation, but this was a real eye-opening presentation for me. It's a real eye-opening presentation for me because of the bleak story, not story, but picture that Mr. Blackman painted for us if we don't start taking this stuff seriously in terms of communication. Because if we don't start taking this stuff seriously in terms of communication, guess what? The revenue that Jim is talking about being wasted on communication, well, we're not going to have any more revenue because he's right. Regulations do get slapped on this industry, but they get slapped on because why? Because we have this attitude when it comes to regulation or to communication. And so let's just walk through this real quick. Actually, yeah, so I'll just jump up here to this slide. So, David could definitely give this presentation better than I, and I asked him if I could get his slides, and so shout out to David for giving me the slides to walk through this. But he paints the picture of the mignon, I assume, the Mignot line, a French term, and my brother's a chef, so I've learned some French pronunciation, although usually I just ask him what we're having for dinner, and he talks for 5 minutes, and I say, that sounds great, because I have no idea what he just said. But the Mignon line, was something back in World War II. And what it was is it was a French fortification against the Germans. And what they did is they built these really strong fortifications here against the border, but then also some weaker fortifications here. Well, what did the Germans do? They just went around the line. They went around the line and basically handed it to France in the matter of, I don't know what it was, days or weeks, but they won decidedly and quickly. And the story here is that that's the goal of environmentalists, to just go around oil and gas and go straight to the source of regulation, because they know that we're not playing that game, because we all think it's a stupid waste of time. And so since we all think it's a stupid waste of time, they're like, all right, cool. Well, we'll have the Natural Resource Defense Council, which, right, their first thing on their slide here is the spill tracker. Or you got Food and Water Watch out here, who right away, this pop-up has been here since I went to the site about a half hour ago before getting ready to record this. But they have here, public lands are for people, not for corporate profit. Stop fracking and everything. And so Food and Water Watch is another one of these radical organizations. And these are the things that Mr. Blackman is talking about in his presentation. So let's just make this a little bit bigger. And I'm going to sort of jump forward to a couple different points, because the end of the story is right here. And what it is that environmentalists' goals, I should say, but singular goal, is to put us out of business, us being the oil and gas industry, out of business in America over the course of about 20, 30 years. It's kind of the boiling of the frog, if you will, right? So everybody knows the old story of the frog. If you just put it in the water at regular temperature and slowly increase the temperature, eventually the frog will be boiled to death, because it doesn't notice that it's being killed. And that's what's happening to the oil and gas industry in America right now. People like Jim think that communication strategies are a stupid waste of time. And so people like Food and Water Watch and their friends across the activist spectrum are able to then go directly to the government and say, and push all of the emotional hot buttons to get people freaked out about things that are actually improving their lives. And the one that is especially insidious is right here, the endangered species. Now, anybody who's drilled out in West Texas knows that you've got to watch out for what I think it's something grouse, pheasant, or whatever it is. But then there's other regulations around a certain type of lizard and so forth. And up in Colorado, Mr. Blackman made the point that it's something like, 90% or 80% of federal lands are technically available to lease for drilling. But as a result of these different acts that these radical activist groups have put forward, it's virtually impossible to do any operations there because of the mating seasons of several different species that they've strung together to get protected in these areas. And so when you look at things like the Endangered Species Act, you can see that they've had a lot of success. Even right here, this was, big surprising thing. Right here, Denton, Texas, right in the heart of oil and gas country, between, North Texas, right there near the border of Oklahoma, clearly a legacy industry in this area. And they were able to go in and scare people with a whole bunch of things A whole bunch of nonsense, basically. And why were they able to do that? Well, they were able to do that again because we think this is all just a huge waste of time. And so the moral of the story is that communications are not only important in the oil and gas industry, they're absolutely essential. A good communication strategy over time is absolutely essential. Why? Well, we just said it, right? If we don't take this thing seriously, then in 20 or 30 years, we're not going to be able to drill wells. It's that simple. It's that simple. And, he lines out here. So why do we lose? Short-term thinking. We live in a non-monolithic competitive industry. We have a disdain for the media, and communications are very much a low priority for us in this industry. And you have to step back and say, okay, well, it makes sense, though, that we do have short-term thinking, because what are we? We're the greatest entrepreneurs in the world, right? We're deal makers. We get revenue. And so you have to have short-term thinking because of the fact that you've got, if you're a private company, you need to make money for yourself and possibly some shareholders that you have privately. But if you're a public company, my light went off. I should have checked that before we started recording. But if you're a public company, of course, you got shareholders to return value to as well. And so it makes sense that we have this short-term focus because we need profits, and profits are good, and capitalism is wonderful. The drawback is that we don't have the long-term thinking of the environmentalists who are trying to boil this frog and kill this industry. And so the point about being non-monolithic and competitive, again, wonderful. Capitalism has brought more people out of poverty in the world than anything in world history. So the competition aspect of this industry it's as good as it gets. On the one side, if you're a direct competitor with anyone in this industry, they don't like you. But if you're not a direct competitor, everybody wants to help each other. And that right there is a bit of, well, it's really the kind of the crux of the problem, is that since we have, let's just name them off, Chesapeake and Exxon and Shell and BP, and then company, not so major, but Apache, Apache, I'm blanking here. Oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. Companies like Apache and Anadarko and so on down the line. They all think in these short-term perspectives, for a good reason that we just talked about, but as well as the competition aspect. Of course, they're competitors. They don't want to, nobody wants to sort of show their cards in this industry, and that's for good reason, because everybody is after the same thing in the ground. But if we don't unite together as an industry and understand the vital importance of a good communication strategy, of a good education strategy, of helping people understand the value that we bring not only to the marketplace, but to America in general. People don't know that if it weren't for oil and gas, the recession in America the Great Recession would have been a depression. It absolutely would have been the greatest depression. The oil and gas industry was the only economic driver that was propping up this country throughout the Great Recession. And it's one of the main reasons that we've bounced back as fast as we have as well. And that's a story that's not out there in the marketplace. Why? Because Jim and everyone else in the industry thinks it's a stupid waste of time. But if you think it's a stupid waste of time, and that it's a waste of revenue, and it's not worth our time, then I can only ask you one question. And maybe it doesn't matter to you. Maybe you're thinking, you know what, I'll be out of this industry in 20, 30 years, so what does it matter to me? Hey, if that's your perspective, more power to you. I wish it was different, but I can't change that. If you get it, hopefully you do. Hopefully you do understand that if we don't take this stuff seriously, and if we don't start seeing communications not only is not stupid, but unbelievably critical to the future growth of this industry, then these bans are going to continue to spread throughout America. The targeting of endangered species is a very strategic move. This frog will be boiled, and this industry will die. So please, take this stuff seriously. I'm not saying that you need to hire Tribe Rocket. I'm not saying that you need to that you need to do anything in regards to me or my company or FTI Consulting or anybody like that. What I'm saying is that the culture of this industry fundamentally has to change, because if it doesn't, there will be no revenue for our children and children's children. God bless America. Take care, guys.